Today, like I had just said, is going to be a connection to everything we did in summary yesterday by means of these first two examples. And then after this first page will be a little bit of new. So it's going to be a good day. Our first example is with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Mr. Smith is driving to his hometown, top secret location. It takes 4 hours to get there. The distance he travels at any time, t, what should I do with that? Is represented by this function. What do I do with functions? Put it in a box. Now, I know it didn't say d of t is, but see how it says that the distance he travels is represented by this function? That makes the distance he travels the other variable, because that's what this function is modeling. So in terms of reading for information, whatever it's, if you see this models this, this becomes my other variable. So let's define our variables. What's t? Good, time measured in hours. Like it. Who's got d of t? Julio? Careful, not speed. Yes, the answer is distance. So back up a little bit, Julio, from that. Just your distance measured in what? Miles. Good. Now, once I have these labeled, where else am I supposed to write these units? Very good. Now, in the last ones, I had like domain and a line, range and a line. Here, domain and range is part of a sentence, but that's okay. We can still put our units. We have to put our units. It will definitely help us later on. So above domain, what am I going to write? Yes. What I write, you write, and if you write with me, that's called actively taking notes. Passively taking notes is you just watch, and then, oh my goodness, she's changing the slide. And then you try to write it all down. Don't do that. Actively take notes with me. So above domain, we're going to write hours. Above range, miles. Very good. So we've read for information. What do we do next? Go back, reread, look for what? Yes. So let's reread. Can anyone find me a restriction here? What did you find last night? 4 hours. It takes 4 hours to get there. Now we need to decide, what decision do we need to make? Is it a restriction on the domain or the range? Ashley, what do you think? Restriction on domain or the range? How do you know? Because why? Fantastic answer. Very good. So that means we're going to take this information and get our domain. So for about 90% of you have your homework done, so I'm just going to write it and we're going to see if we match. What variable should I be putting right here? T. Good. T from 0 to 4. Interval notation, blast from the past. Bracket 0, comma 4, bracket. That connects way back to what we did a couple weeks ago. Now, what decision do we need to make? What are we going to decide? That was the key. So we talked yesterday how many people get to right here, but then are not sure what to do next. Decide what? Yes, so we decided we have the domain. So we have what and we need what? Correct. We have our domain, we need our range. Which means we have which values? We have x, Myri, and need to find what? Good job. We have x values and we need our y values. So now we're going to use math to make that happen. How are we going to do that? Yes. What's that going to look like? Who have I not heard from that can help me out? Yes, Myri. What's that going to look like? Tell me in words. Good job. What should I put that 0 in? Yes. So d of 0 equals 0. What am I going to go check off? What did we just take care of? Bam. Took care of that. Okay? What's next? 85 times 4, yes, which is 340. Awesome. What am I going to go check off next? Okay, so we plugged in our x values and we got out our y values. So now we can write the range. Who's got the range? I know Myri does. Who else? Someone else? Someone else? No, I heard from you. Emmanuel, what you got? Sorry, say that louder. D of t, yep. 0, 2. Good job. Again, bringing back our interval notation. Bracket what to what? Good. How long is it going to take him to get to his hometown? Yes. Given to us. It takes 4 hours. So this was just a, are we good at reading for information? So let's pause for a second. This is clearly an example of where I am given my domain. I know my domain. I don't know the range. I start with x, don't know y. Now let's read. Get that? Start with x, don't know y. Yeah, all right. Ha, funny. Yeah. There we go. Okay, number 2. So this is still connected, but we're going to be working with a different set of information. Mrs. Smith disagrees with Mr. Smith's 4-hour estimate. She knows that from where they are, it's approximately 168 miles to get to his hometown. The distance he travels at any time t, oh, there we go again, any time t, is represented by this function. Box it. Did our variables change? No, it didn't. So we're still going to make a note of them, okay? Defining the variables, it's a framework for everything else we're going to do. So even though it didn't ask us, we're going to make a little note off here to the side. So I've defined my variables. Right? The distance he travels is modeled by, so that's how I knew that that was what my output would be. What am I going to go back and reread for? Marcel? A restriction. Where's my restriction here? 168 miles. Very good. Is this a restriction on the domain? Oh, wait. What did I skip? What did I not do I was supposed to do? Yes. Above domain, what do I write? Time measured how? Time is measured in miles? Hours. And above range? Measured in miles. Put the units. Okay. Now that I wrote those 2 words, now we can decide, is this a restriction or a limit on my domain or my range? Because range is all about what? Yep. Restriction on range. So let's see if our answers match for how we wrote this last night on the homework. Do we match? Raise your hand if we matched. Couple? Those of us who... Yes? Good? Those of us who weren't sure of what to write, can you talk to me now? What happened last night about this? I'm listening. Because many did the top right, but then got a little stuck right here. So I want to pause. I want to take a minute for you to think about it. Do we all agree, and does it make sense why this is for the range? Yes? We have no questions? No? Okay. If one comes to mind, raise your hand. I'll come back to it. Okay? So now I need to decide what? What? Yes. What do I have? What do I need? Yes, I have the y values. I need the x values. So what's that going to look like? How am I going to take these y values and use them to find x values? Marcel? So I'm going to write 0 equals 85t. That's it. Notice, it's completely different from what we did up here. This is what it looks like when we plug in a value for x, as on the screen. This is what it looks like when we plug in a value for x. This is what it looks like to plug something in for y. When we're plugging in y values, there is no d of anything. So real quick here, I divide by 85, t equals 0. Very good. What am I going to go check off? Yes. Took care of this 0. What are we going to take care of next? Good job. And now I divide by 85. If you didn't do this last night because you weren't sure, take the time right now and do the division. Show yourself how we're going to get these answers. Tim, you have it? What is it? T equals 1.9798. So if we round, I would take 97 or 98. I think for rounding, let's go to 1.98. Do you agree with that? Okay, fantastic. What am I going to go check off? Bam, 168. We took care of it. So now let's compare answers for, if you did not write the domain before, write it now. For those of you who already wrote it, I'm going to put it up and we'll see if we match. Question? Was there a question? Good. Myri, do we match? Good. Okay. Our follow-up question here. Will they get there sooner or later than Mr. Smith predicted? Explain. Less miles? Less time. Right. Mr. Smith, so yes. Mr. Smith predicted what? Can't write right now. There we go. Mr. Smith predicted 4 hours. Smartboard's being a little off. So write your sentence while I catch up with you, okay? Mr. Smith predicted it would take 4 hours. But Mrs. Smith calculated what? Take approximately 2 hours. So this kind of reasoning question, don't skip these. Okay, you can do these. Yes. Okay, so we've completely summarized what we did yesterday. In the top, I am given my domain. I have knowledge of x. I do not know what y is. Here in the second example, what did I know? I knew my y values. I did not know x. So here on one page, again, is an example of both, which is good because it's not going away, like I said. So let's apply that knowledge to our first question today that has a new piece. Our first question today that has a new piece. Samantha is saving for her first car. She currently has $515.85 and is saving $62 each week. Write a function rule for the situation. We've never been asked to do this before, but it does strongly connect to last year. Did it say define the variables? No, but guess what we're going to do anyway? Define the variables. So it doesn't assign me any letters, so for this, let's go ahead and use x and f of x. What does x represent? X is the domain, but in terms of this real-world problem, yes, very good. Can you raise your hand? Did anybody last year remember looking for words like per, each, and every? See how it's half yes, half no? Some did, some didn't. So let's all get on the same page. Looking for words like per, each, or every can help me know how to define x. So notice when I asked, she said each week because she was looking for that word each. So I know that number of weeks is going to be x. What is f of x going to be? Amount she's saving. F of x, or that output, is always going to be a total of some kind. So here, the total we're describing is how much money she's saving. So total money, total amount, savings with a dollar sign next to it. Be specific. Very good. Now that we've defined our variables, I don't see an equation I can box. Why is that? Because there isn't one. We're going to write it. Who remembers what M represents from last year? What's M? M is the domain? Try again. Nope. Try again. What's M? Y equals mx plus b. What's M? Starts with an S. L. Slope. There you go. A. Also known as rate of change. Rate of change. So can you find me the rate of change here? $62 each week. So that makes M, we're not writing with a highlighter, are we? M equals 62 each week. Is it an emergency? Okay, take the notes. M is 62, rate of change. What's B? What was B last year? Y-intercept. But here we're not talking about a graph, right? So here we're looking for an initial value. See? Bring it back. Initial value. Where do we see an initial value? There you go. That's what she started with in her account. So to help us out, this was our M, rate of change. And this was our B value, initial value. Please answer that, Ms. J's room, student speaking. B was, which was initial value. So how am I going to put this all together as an equation? What am I going to write? Instead of y equals, what could I do for function notation? Rate of change? Okay. Instead of, so whoever just said y equals, who said y equals? You both did? Oh, go ahead. Instead of y equals, how could I use function notation? What am I going to write? How do you write? I'm not trying to ask a trick question. Instead of y, write what? X of x? Try again. F of x. There you go. F of x equals, put it all together. 62x there we go. And let's put it in a box. Now we have an equation to put in a box. Yay. That particular part I can't, only because this goes straight back to Algebra 1. But what can you do tonight? Where will this all be? Not just in your head, on the website. On the website. So go ahead and walk yourself through it again. That's why I put them up, okay? But I will just take a second and go back through. So what we just did, first, even though it didn't ask us, we defined our variables. Then we're given directions to write a function, which would be our linear function mx plus b, where m is my rate and b is going to be my initial value. It tells me she's saving $62 each week, which makes that my value for m. It's my rate. And she initially had this much money in the bank, which makes that b, my initial value. Now, we're asked a follow-up question here. Can the domain be all real numbers? What is the domain all about here? It is? What's domain about? What do we think? What's domain about here? Number of weeks. So, it's asking you, can the domain be negative infinity to infinity? Why not? Can't be technically both yes and no. So let's pick one. I'll help you vote. It's no, but why? True. So Marcel's saying there's no given restriction. But remember, yes, Julio. It's a real world situation, so what can't you have? You can go to infinity, but what can't you have? The other way. Negatives. Can you have negative weeks? No. Can't have negative weeks. But to what you guys are saying, you're right. It doesn't tell us how long she's saving for, correct? So what am I going to write here for my domain? What to what? 0 to 0? 62 is how much you're saving each week. I don't see a limit on the weeks, so this is going to go to what? Forever. Infinity. Good job. So this is just helping us remember, even though this doesn't give me a specific restriction, the real world will always restrict it somehow. Can't have negative weeks. Okay, so the first new piece of today was knowing how to write this model. The other new piece is going to be using the model. So check it out. This question says, how many weeks would it take Sherry to save $1,795? Here's our strategy. Circle what's given. Circle this. Ask yourself, is it circle or highlight, your choice. Is this a value for x or f of x? How do you know that? No, can't have negative weeks. That's okay. So again, we circled the given, and we know it's f of x because we look at your definitions. When in doubt, you can look up at the top and see how you defined x and how you defined f of x. So now that I have that knowledge, how am I going to write my equation? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Who have I not heard from yet? You did. You participated. Thank you very much. What you got? Okay, let's do this. Tell me. Fantastic. And you're going to solve for? Very good. Go ahead and solve for x. We'll compare our answers. So from here, you should be working on your own. Go ahead and use your calculators. Get to subtracting. Get some division going on. Okay, one person has the answer. We're going to wait. Let's see what the group consensus is when we're done. If it's an emergency, go ahead. 12, 7, 9, 15. Brandon, you got it? What are you guys getting for an answer? He got 20.64. Is that what you guys got? Okay, sorry. Some of us aren't done. We'll wait. We do subtract the 515.85 from both sides. We got to divide by 62, right? Yes. Good job. So how do we actually interpret this answer, though? Because we got to answer the question. What's the real-world meaning of this answer? How many weeks? What's 20 weeks plus some more days? 21 weeks. 21 weeks for her to save that money. Sentence is key. It shows that you know the meaning of the math. Now, it's really important to me that you have time to practice together before we start. So we're actually going to take a moment. We're going to skip the car wash question. We'll save it for later. Let's jump to the homework, which is attached. Check out the first real-world question on the homework. Sosa wanted an interesting question. What's more interesting than arrow squid? You're welcome. Go ahead and read, and then we're going to talk. And remember to actively read. So if you see variables, what are you going to do with the variables? Yes. If you see a function, you're going to put it in a box. Go for it. So I see people next to me, they underlined this, and they put this in a box. Do we all agree? Does it say somewhere here, define variables? No. But what are we going to do anyway? Do it anyway. It's going to be the framework for the rest of the question. So B equals what? Length measured how? And M of B is what? Mass, weight. I think those words could go interchangeably, whatever you like. So we'll put mass. And how is mass being measured? Grams. Great job. So our A question, now we've established what we know. So in this one, it did give us the model. And some of the other questions, like on the back, you're going to have to write your own. Jasmine is a biologist. She's walking on the beach as part of her research and comes across the beak of an arrow squid. Very cool. Studying arrow squid as part of her current research, she measures it and finds that the lower beak has a length of 5 millimeters. Approximate the mass of the squid. What should I be circling or highlighting? Yes, 5 millimeters. That is what I am given. And is this a value for B or M of B? How do you know? Look at how you defined your variables. What's B measured by? Millimeters, and this is millimeters. So if you define your variables correctly, it really does help. So how am I going to show working with this number? What am I going to write? What can I write? There's only one thing I can write. I want to use this model to find the mass. M of 5. Very good. Go for it. M of 5 equals 236 times 5 minus 513. Let's get our answers, get a label on that answer, and we'll compare. Let's see if we match when you're done. So I see people with numbers, which is great, but what's the label? What did you just find? 667 what? We knew the millimeters. What were we trying to... There we go. We were trying to find the grams. So that squid weighed 667 grams. B, to the nearest tenth of a millimeter, about how long is the lower beak of an arrow squid with a mass of 1,100 grams? What am I going to circle? 1,100 grams. And decide what? Very good. And write that down. Trust me, it's a strategy that works very well. Value for M of B. So what is this going to look like when I plug this in? Hector, you want to help me out with that? What's this going to look like when I plug that in? Fantastic. 1,100 equals 236 B. So make sure you're 6 and then that B doesn't look anything, looks different, okay? And now, Anas, what can I solve for? Yes. Wait, I know the Y. I just plugged that in. So what am I solving for? X, but in this case it's a... What variable? We didn't write X right here. What is it? Look right here. What's the unknown? What letter is that? B. That's what we're going to solve for. Let me know what you get. Emmanuel, one sec. Gilberto, what'd you get? Did you get 6.832? Gilberto, check in with her, see how your work compares. Maybe it was a calculator thing. Who got 6.83? Or 6.8 something? Yay. Awesome. That's right. B equals... Now, it tells us to round to what, though? We got to keep that in mind. The 10th. So it's going to be B equals 6.8. But that's just a number. What's my label? I knew the grams. Another way to figure that out, it asks me to the nearest tenth of a millimeter. So you can always reread and check the question, and it will tell you. So here's a solid start to tonight's homework. 2, 3, and 4 are for you. And remember, any questions, you can always reach out to me on Remind, and I will get right back to you with a hint and help you see what's up. Okay? Go ahead and start. We definitely have a couple minutes. We can start our homework. So let's do it. All right? Any questions? Bring it up. Nice job today.